When you think of iconic stadiums, you might think of the classics: Wrigley Field in Chicago, Fenway Park in Boston, Lambeau Field in Green Bay, or you might think of the modern marvels in the new stadium revolution, like SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London, or US Bank Stadium in Minnesota. But one stadium that has earned its place in the most iconic venues of sports is Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. It's been a busy year for the 71,000-seat venue. After hosting the SEC Championship and Peach Bowl, Mercedes-Benz Stadium will host next week's College Football Playoff National Championship game, all in the span of just 5 weeks. When you add in home games for the NFL's Atlanta Falcons and MLS's Atlanta United, a variety of concerts, Copa America matches, and even the Super Bowl, Mercedes-Benz Stadium has consistently hosted hundreds of events each year since its opening. Owned by the state of Georgia and operated by billionaire Arthur Blank's company, Mercedes-Benz Stadium has one of the most unique designs in sports. Highlighted by 8 sliding wedge-shaped pedals, the roof creates an optical illusion, sliding open in a straight line via the push of a button to reveal direct sunlight in just 8 minutes. But more importantly, Mercedes-Benz Stadium has become a blueprint for other cities and teams nationwide. It was built on a narrow plot of land that has easy access to public transportation. The concessions are some of the cheapest in professional sports, and the venue's primary tenants, the Atlanta Falcons and Atlanta United, covered $1.8 billion of the $2 billion construction costs. It probably goes without saying, but an economic partnership like that is rare, as professional sports teams have become accustomed to socializing costs and privatizing profit. So here's how Arthur Blank made this all happen: the finances, taxes, construction process, revenue sharing agreements, and much more. When Falcons owner Arthur Blank initially started thinking about the type of stadium he wanted to replace the Georgia Dome, he kept coming back to one word: iconic. The venue had to withstand the test of time and present itself as more as a destination than a stadium. Blank wanted the Atlanta community to be proud of it, while also offering them the opportunity to see events outside the typical 8 to 9 Falcons home games each year. So when it came time to pick a design, Arthur Blank's team invited 5 architectural firms down to Atlanta to interview with the Falcons owner. These 5 firms were given just 6 weeks to create an initial design, with the sole directive being that Blank, quote, didn't want to move the needle, he wanted to change the game. Arthur Blank's internal team then pre-ranked the 5 groups based on who they thought was most likely to win to prepare their boss for the meeting. The only problem? Blank loved Hoke, a global architecture firm that his team had ranked dead last. But Hoke won the bid for good reason. They created the most unique design. Rather than starting at the base or side of the building, Hoke's Bill Johnson drew dozens of designs by starting with the roof. The idea was to create something unique that had never been done before. Hoke built a model, brought it down to Atlanta, and called Blank up to see it during the meeting. Blank pressed a big red button on the side and the roof of the miniature model started to close, sort of like the opening of an iris on a camera. Blank was sold and Hoke won the bid, even though everyone on his team was quietly unsure whether the model they were looking at could even be built or how much it would cost.
I think we knew right away this particular design was the most exciting to us, the most iconic and the most unique and the most of everything.
The design was set, but that was the easy part. Now it was time to talk about the budget and see what his grand vision would cost. Arthur Blank started by asking the city of Atlanta for $300 million in taxpayer money, with the idea being that he would privately pay for the remaining $700 million of the $1 billion construction costs. But after facing some backlash from taxpayers, Blank reduced his request to $200 million, and he got creative. Rather than the money coming directly from taxpayers, Blank introduced a proposal that gathered the cash from a hotel tax. Using hotel taxes to fund stadium projects has become a common practice in larger cities, because hotel fees are usually paid by out-of-town travelers. These travelers aren't going to cancel their trip over a 1% tax buried in the fine print, and it is essentially a backdoor way for taxpayers to pass the fees on to other people. The state would still be responsible for some smaller stuff, like $24 million in public land and $12 million for a pedestrian bridge outside the venue. But Arthur Blank also signed private real estate deals that paid 2 existing churches on the land a multiple of their fair market value to relocate, with Friendship Baptist Church receiving $19.5 million. Now, that's not a bad relocation fee if you ask me. However, the unique part about this deal is that the state of Georgia would still own the physical stadium, despite putting up a small portion of the money. In return, they would let Arthur Blank's holding company use the venue for free, having him cover the operational costs, but also allowing him to keep revenue from non-NFL games and events too. This would have been a good deal for the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia, but it got even better over time. Due to the unique design of the building and the general nature of stadium construction, the project went way over budget. Blank soon raised the budget to $1.2 billion, then $1.4 billion, and then $1.5 billion. And while most reports out there today say that the stadium's final cost came in around $1.5 to $1.7 billion, Arthur Blank says the actual number was closer to $2 billion. Yikes. However, it's important to note that Arthur Blank was responsible for this increase. The city and state didn't pay any additional money for the overruns, but the government did create a waterfall fund for the hotel tax. This meant that anything over the initial $200 million in stadium funding collected from the hotel tax would go into a separate account, with the additional proceeds used to fund stadium upgrades and repairs over the coming years. That waterfall fund will eventually make it look like taxpayers spent more than they did on the venue, but again, this felt like a fair compromise given that Arthur Blank was covering most of the costs, and Atlanta's residents got a world-class venue in return. Arthur Blank was incredibly involved in the entire process. Despite not being happy with the increased budget, Blank was all in. He personally tested 20 different seat options for the venue, figuring out which type of padding would be most comfortable for visitors. He focused on the small details too, like the brightness of the lighting in the bathroom.
Oh, that's horrible.
He is so involved in this.
It's awful.
Sat in 20 chairs.
It's awful.
He literally gave it the the butt test. He wanted to see, what did it feel like? What would his fans sit in?
I definitely think with the padded seat, it's much more comfortable.
He takes the time to get into those details
Very cool.
and care about it. That's what makes him unique.
A little dark, yeah. It's dark.
After all the gnashing of teeth and the difficulty and the frustration, when this stadium comes out the other end, that will be why this building is so extra special.
And Blank hired hundreds of local Atlanta residents to build the venue through a program called West Side Works, many of whom were formerly incarcerated with criminal records. After 7 long years, 4 years of planning, and a 3-year construction process, Mercedes-Benz Stadium officially opened its doors in 2017. The venue was and is still largely unlike anything else in sports. The roof, for instance, is an engineering masterpiece. Arthur Blank's team originally wanted the roof to open in 12 minutes, but they did one better. They got the roof to open in just 8 minutes. The 62,000 square foot, 360-degree Halo scoreboard weighs 372 tons, making it 3 times larger than the NFL's next largest LED video display. Mercedes-Benz Stadium also has a 16-story window on the stadium's west side that provides daylight and panoramic views of Atlanta's skyline into the stadium. There is a massive public art display inside the venue that has 180 pieces of art by 55 artists and counting. It was the first venue in North American professional sports history to be LEED certified, which made the stadium the country's most sustainable sports venue. And when you contribute the 20,000 parking spots within a 20-minute walk of the venue with nearby public transportation, it's also extremely accessible. You might hear Atlanta residents complain about public transportation options, but who doesn't complain about their city's public transportation? I'm looking at you, Baltimore. The fact that you can fly to Atlanta to attend a game while spending just a few dollars and minutes on a train to go in and out of the stadium without renting a car is something that most cities couldn't even dream of. However, finances and accessibility are just part of the allure of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Arthur Blank wanted to make it the best experience in sports, so his team took inspiration from Augusta National Golf Club to lower stadium concession prices. Fans can now buy hot dogs for $2, a pizza slice will run you $3. A soda and a souvenir cup, that's $4. And if you feel like having a beer, you can pay $5 at one of the stadium's 1,200 beer taps, nearly 45 times the 30 beer taps fans had access to at the Georgia Dome. Many owners initially thought Arthur Blank was crazy for introducing this fan-first pricing menu. TV rights will always be the most critical item for a team's balance sheet, but concessions still bring in about $2 million per game for an NFL team. This ended up having the opposite effect though. By building out more kiosks to reduce wait times and keeping concession prices consistent across every event, including the Super Bowl, Arthur Blank revolutionized the stadium experience. The Atlanta Falcons consistently ranked #1 on the NFL's annual internal survey for food quality, price-to-value ratio, speed of service, and variety. The Falcons say that the price decrease led to an 88% increase in merchandise sales in the first year. Fans are spending 16% more money on concessions than they did a few years prior, and the average of 16,000 more fans are now entering the stadium 2 hours before the game. But the best indicator that the new model is working is that several other professional sports teams have now copied it. From Ryan Smith and the Utah Jazz to Matt Ishbia and the Phoenix Suns, owners across North American sports are lowering concession prices for fans, understanding that a better game day experience keeps them coming back and often leads to eventual purchase of higher margin products like merchandise. With so many new stadiums popping up over the last few years and more planned for the future, it's fair to think that Mercedes-Benz Stadium will soon feel old. But the reality is that Falcons owner Arthur Blank has built a model that every other stadium can now follow. Atlanta and its taxpayers benefited because they had visitors pay a hotel tax in exchange for thousands of new jobs and access to a surplus of world-class events, including the Super Bowl, NCAA Men's Final Four, College Football Playoff National Championship Game, FIFA World Cup matches, and concerts by Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and Jay-Z. Arthur Blank benefited because the deal gave him total control of the venue's economics, including revenue from events, and even the time Kanye West, in typical Kanye West fashion, paid $1 million a day to rent the stadium while recording his album Donda. But more importantly, fans were the biggest winners. Mercedes-Benz Stadium has everything you would want in a venue, including a financial agreement primarily funded with private money, easily accessible public transportation to and from the venue, cheap concessions, a unique design, and access to a variety of premium events. That combination of factors has become rare in today's world. If a stadium is super luxurious, it is often expensive for fans, or if the venue is privately funded, it usually lacks good public transportation. The list goes on and on. There are always trade-offs. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, though, might not be perfect, but it is better than most. Arthur Blank deserves a ton of credit for his vision and patience required to make it happen. And it proves owners, taxpayers, and fans can always find a solution that makes sense for everyone.